that has gotten so much attention both in the media and online, and rightfully so. This is not a case you see every day. We're talking about the fatal fall of this 21-year-old woman, Maria Eduarda Rodriguez de Freitas, who plunged to her death in a roping incident where she was allegedly tossed off an abandoned bridge and wasn't attached to any rope or cords, 130 feet down. Horrible. And it was all apparently caught on video that is circulated on social media.
She was wearing a harness. She was wearing a helmet. And she fell 130 feet to her death anyway. Because not a single rope was attached to her body. That one fact changes everything about this story. Because this was not a freak accident where equipment failed under pressure. This was the complete absence of a safety system. On an abandoned railway bridge in Brazil that hadn't carried a train in 3 decades, operated by a group with no legal authorization to be there at all.
Media, we can seemingly hear bystanders on the tape screaming in Portuguese, "The rope, people, the rope." So in a little, we're going to be bringing on a bungee, a roping expert to talk about potential red flags, liability, what should have been done. Because right now, 3 instructors are facing charges. Luis Felipe Feliciano Egoroff, 32 years old, Vitor de Freitas Gonçalves, 27 years old, and Macon Fernandes Sintra, 42 years old. They were arrested, and they're charged with what we understand to be in Brazil homicide with eventual intent. 2 allegedly fled the scene before they were captured. And by the way, according to NBC News, Brazilian law characterizes this as killing someone not necessarily with the intent to kill, but by engaging in a dangerous act that carries a
Picture a surgeon scrubbing in, putting on gloves, picking up a scalpel, and then realizing there is no patient on the table. The performance of safety, without the reality of it. Before we go deeper into what the evidence actually shows, make sure you're subscribed to CrimeNest Media. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the facts. 21-year-old Maria Eduarda Rodrigues de Freitas was thrown from the skeleton bridge in Lumen, Brazil, by 3 men operating under the informal group names Entre Cordas and Evoy.
A failure to verify and supervise the placement of that rope on the jump. G1 reports that in the video, the men allegedly carrying Maria Eduarda appear to be wearing shirts emblazoned with the brands Entre Cordas and Evoy. Authorities say these are informal groups of rope jumping practitioners. There's no official company behind this operation. And according to the New York Post, a defense attorney for the suspects said that they don't know who was responsible for attaching the safety line that day. Defense counsel also reportedly told the G1 outlet that these individuals were highly experienced, that this had been the company's only death in years. According to NBC News, defense lawyer said the suspects are in shock. According to O Globo, they apparently didn't have a reason why this young woman.
According to Brazilian authorities, they had no authorization to be on that structure. According to the public statements of Brazilian delegate Andrea Dantes Levy, the death resulted directly from a failure to verify and supervise the placement of the rope on the jump.
So with that in mind, she says, when it comes to Maria Eduarda, quote, "I don't really know what happened." Now, you also have delegate Andrea Dantes Levy, who told the outlet Globo that the company operating this rope jump, quote, "didn't even have authorization to be there," and that this was a result of a failure.
When arrested, the suspects could not explain whose job it was to attach the safety line. They could not explain why no safety check occurred.
This had been the company's only death in years. According to NBC News, defense lawyer said the suspects are in shock. According to O Globo, they apparently didn't have a reason why this young woman was reportedly not secured properly. G1 reported that the suspects also appeared disoriented, that they couldn't say, again, whose job it was to do what that day, or explain why the rope wasn't attached, why a safety check wasn't apparently done. I will tell you, according to Bachi Noticias, one of these individuals that was arrested allegedly told authorities he didn't even realize that Maria Eduarda hadn't been secured and only understood what was going on when he heard people screaming. That's when he claims he left the platform.
One told authorities he didn't even realize she was unsecured until he heard people screaming.
I will tell you, according to Bachi Noticias, one of these individuals that was arrested allegedly told authorities he didn't even realize that Maria Eduarda hadn't been secured and only understood what was going on when he heard people screaming. That's when he claims he left the platform, saw what happened, claims he rappels down, sees police and a healthcare professional performing life-saving measures. Now, before I
no authorization, no safety check, no accountability. Safety expert Matt Lawrence, director of Bungee Consultants International, reviewed the publicly available footage and identified the core problem immediately. In a legitimate operation, he explained, a participant physically cannot reach the edge of a jump site unattached. The reason is a principle called redundancy. Backup upon backup. Every connection point verified by a second operator.
This doesn't look very good. And then when we talk about procedures, and this is the other big one, when we talk about redundancy for procedures, it's, again, the backup procedure. So if someone's putting a harness on you, is there a second person going around checking that adjustment, making sure it was tightened properly and secured properly? Is there a second person looking at that connection that you did with that carabiner after the first person did it? You could have two carabiners on there, but if only one person's doing it, maybe one of them doesn't get done up properly. He got distracted by the person beside him talking to him, asking him a question. So that second person checking all those connection points is very important in creating redundancy. Right. On a bungee jumping site or in a rope swing that complies equally to both.
Every harness double checked before anyone moves toward the edge.
We're also talking about procedures and equipment. So if you're a guest on site and you're looking at this, when I talk about redundancy, let's look at the harnesses. Is there two harnesses on that person? Or does that single harness have two attachment points that allow, two attachments to that? So if one fails, you have the other.
Can I ask you about that real quick? So you're talking, is there a backup? Like, for example, I don't know if this is the cases that happen, but if somebody's like, oh my gosh, we forgot one cord, we forgot one rope, there's a backup in case somebody forgets it. Like, is that something that exists?
Well, and that's, in the layman's terms, that's what redundancy is as we apply to equipment.
Right.
Okay. So when you say a backup, is there a backup harness? Let's just use that wording. So is there two harnesses? Is there a backup harness? Yes. Is there two ropes that are attaching that person to the harnesses that connect to the structure? That's a backup. Is there two carabiners that attach those ropes to each connection point on the harness? There's the other backup. So those are all things that, just a layperson can look and say, I don't see that second carabiner. I don't see that second rope. This is just a single point attachment. This doesn't look very good.
The other principle is competency documented training, verified experience, structured procedures that turn safety into a system rather than an assumption.
I'll just give you, I'm going to use bungee jumping as the example because that's what I'm an expert in. Our safety standards are governed by two fundamental principles. One is called redundancy. The other is called competency. And they apply to both equipment and procedures. Let's talk about competency and equipment. If a piece of equipment is competent, the load ratings are above, like let's say a 10-to-1 ratio, above what they need to be for the activity. And they're also designed and suited for doing what you're doing with them during that activity. As far as people go, when we talk about competence, if someone is competent, they will have the required knowledge, skills, training, and experience to perform that safely, which means they've gone to some type of courses, the on-site training program of the operator as well. You have competent equipment and competent people. And then when we talk about redundancy, we're also talking about procedures and equipment. So if you're a guest on site and you're looking at this, when I talk about redundancy, let's look at the harnesses. Is there two harnesses on that person? Or does that single harness have two attachment points that allow, two attachments to that? So if one fails, you have the other.
When both exist, attachment failure is not just unlikely. It is structurally prevented.
Long enough or whatever to be the actual rope that was supposed to be being used. What is evident, though, that there is no rope attached to that person. That is very, very evident in the video. And again, that's just simple. Like, again, if you have a site operations manual and you have competent people, what's required when you write a site operations manual is a series of checklists that everybody has to go through as they're performing the hookups. And so it's like before that person gets to the edge, there's 10 things that have to happen. Okay, first of all, let's check the harnesses. Double check the harnesses. Second, pick up the rope, connect it to the thing. That gets double checked as well. And before that, they can even get a detach from their safety line, which, there should be a safety line on that person until they are connected to the whole entire rigging system. So all those things have to happen. Harness checks, connection checks, anchor checks, before anybody can even just proceed to the point where they can even get into a position to jump. And then once they get into that position, there's another series of checks that have to happen. Okay, put your feet to the edge, get to this point, get to that point. I'm going to count to 3. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. And if those aren't occurring properly, you need to pull back and start over. So there is a very low level.
Neither existed here. No authorization, no safety check, no accountability. And here is where this story becomes something larger than one tragedy. Rope jumping currently operates in a global regulatory vacuum. Unlike bungee jumping, which in many jurisdictions requires engineering approvals, certified equipment, and licensed operators, rope jumping has no recognized international safety standard.
But in terms of rope jumps, no safety standards exist. So that is really the main problem. And when you ask something like, how could this happen? The answers to that are, the barriers for entry into that activity are quite low, and anybody with a harness and a rope can really, and really with the knowledge that they think they can go out and do this, can do so and make a quick buck doing it. They're operating in an environment with no safety or no recognized safety standards. And that safety standard is a key element in the ecosystem to create any safe environment for a consumer. And a good safety standard will govern all aspects of the operation, the design, the manufacture of all the equipment, and the operation of the activity itself. And
The
then
barrier to entry, as Lawrence stated, is essentially zero. A harness, a rope, the confidence to charge participants. That is all it takes to call yourself an operator. And the consequences of that vacuum are documented in public record, on a bridge that the local municipality had repeatedly asked the federal government to inspect.
For 30 years. And as we reported last time, according to 30 UOL Años, the municipality was considering taking legal action against the federal government over alleged negligence in maintaining and controlling access to this bridge. The city government reportedly said that it had previously sent letters to the federal government requesting there be security inspections of this bridge. Well, guess what happened since we last spoke? Reportedly, Councilwoman Bruna Magalhaes reportedly confirmed to Bachi Noticias that this bridge is going to be torn down by the federal government.
Those requests went unanswered. The same bridge, the same operators, 90 participants the month before, all of whom went home.
What's confusing is, you have defense counsel for at least one or all the suspects saying this is the first time anything like this has happened. They've done so many before. I talked earlier about how an influencer did a jump on that same bridge with the same operators. They said there was safety checks. There were 90 participants that day. It takes just, obviously one thing like this to happen and everything changes and you wish it didn't. But that's confusing too, right? It's not like they were operating for 2 days and then this happened. People make mistakes, but at the same time, how does something like this happen?
Until the day one did not. Here's the question that the public record cannot yet answer. If Brazilian authorities knew people were regularly jumping from an unauthorized, uninspected, 30-year decommissioned federal structure, and the municipal government had submitted formal written requests for oversight that were ignored, at what point does institutional negligence become institutional responsibility? The federal government has since authorized the bridge's demolition. The structure will come down. The paper trail of ignored inspection requests will remain. Look up the municipal correspondence between Lumen Ria city officials and Brazilian federal infrastructure authorities regarding the skeleton bridge. It is a matter of public record. Read the dates. Read what was requested and what was not done. Then come back and tell us in the comments when a government receives a written warning, ignores it, and someone dies. Where does accountability actually stop?
How does something like this happen?
Yeah, well, you can ride a horse backward your whole life and never fall off that horse, and so, but there's elements of there's layers to the onion. Okay. So, and if you only got a couple layers, you could be safe for a long time. Oh, I'm getting away with not having that double check because my one guy, he's doing it right every time, but eventually it catches up to you. Eventually you get it. And so this is where, it just needs a bit more structure and regulation. And
a lot of more questions are going to be asked about this. Matt Lawrence, thank you so much for coming on and trying to make sense of what we're seeing here. Really appreciate it.
If this video made you think, share it with someone who needs to see it. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for CrimeNest Media. The documents are public. The questions are open. We'll keep following both.